We are now live, fellas.
Hello, world. Hello, world.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Show on Urbancast. I'm Jack, and I'm joined tonight with my co-host Damon. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Peter James Williams, who's running for the 6th Congressional District here in the state of Louisiana. The district spans from Shreveport to Baton Rouge, spans over there to Opelousas, and then we're excited to hear about Peter's vision and his plans for our district and communities. Before we dive in, we encourage everyone to share this broadcast and participate by asking questions. And you can always, while we're having this conversation, you can drop a comment and we will definitely see them. Remember, one of our main goals is to get everyone, especially our young voters, to get out and go vote. Your voice matters. Now let's get started. Welcome, Peter.
Yes,
All
how
right,
y'all
Mr.
doing,
Peter.
guys? Thank y'all for
How you
having
doing,
me. I'm
Mr.
excited.
Peter?
I'm doing
Yes,
good.
sir.
Doing good. I'm very
That's
excited to
good.
be on the show today.
All right, it's definitely a pleasure of mine to welcome you here. Like I said, told you earlier, I'm down here in Orlando, Florida, but I'm looking to move back into that area here in the next 4 or
Well,
5 years. So, Mr. Peter, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background, and what motivated you to decide to run for Congressional District 6, the newly created district?
well, to be honest, I ran for this very seat 10 years ago in 2014 when the headline was with Gary Graves and Governor Edwin Edwards. And after I made my introduction and I signed up, a gentleman said I was a Mr. Irrelevant candidate. And it didn't insult me, brother. Yeah, it didn't insult me, Brother Damon and Brother Jack, but it inspired me to go a little deeper. But to answer your question about who I am, my name is Peter Williams. I live in Leavenworth, Louisiana, which is in Pointe-Coupee Parish, the center of this district. I have my educational background. I graduated from Kaplan High School, graduated from USL back in 1980 in Parks and Recreation. But currently I'm an agriculturalist and I'm a tree farmer, but most of all, I'm a community advocate. I advocate on 7 major federal programs: agriculture, health, housing, education, transportation, recreation, and incarceration. And when I deal with incarceration, I don't deal with it per se just because of the lockup, but I look at prevention and intervention versus retention. What I bring to the table is a wealth of community advocacy with professional connections. The new District 6 is 75% rural areas. I worked with it because of agriculture, because of forestry, because of my educational background. I understand the lay of the land. We have a very diverse group of folks because from East Baton Rouge to New Roads, you have a city dwellers. From Pointe-Coupee Parish going through Rapides, you have the intermediate. When you pass through Avals, you have a multicultural with the Native Americans, African Americans, and Caucasians. When you go toward Lafayette, you have to deal with the Creole, with Opelousas and the Yam and the farmers. So, it's a very diverse part. And so when you go from I-49, Alexandria, you got to go through Natchitoches, which you're dealing with also the Creoles and the Indians and then the Cajuns. And then you're going to DeSoto Parish. You have another offshoot of Native Americans and Blacks. And then you go all the way up to Caddo, which is Shreveport. Now you have the urban areas. So those 7 components that I talked about, after I ran in 2014, I really dove into it because I knew sooner or later a new district was going to be formed. It was just unrealistic that you had so many people living with taxation and no representation. And I'm going to be very candid. I'm going to be very straight. The people that I'm talking about is Black folks. It's not a secret. It's not a hidden thing. And I'm not dissing the white families in District 6 or the white families across Louisiana or America. But when you designate a district and it's identified by the federal government that something has been missing, it's time to play catch up. And as I was sharing earlier before we got on, I lived in between segregation and integration. And I saw from Martin Luther King to Malcolm X to John F. Kennedy to all of those icons get assassinated. And here we transition into integration, but the leadership was stagnated and the barriers was created to implement what happened from Jim Crow in Louisiana to systemic racism and barriers that's in place now. Only difference is they're not hanging you. They're beating you with your social security number, beating you with your zip code, and they're beating you with the location you live. So what I bring to the table is reality. I bring to the table honesty. What you see is what you get. We're in a climate now that is not time to be passive. It's time for the candidate in this race, and hopefully me that win it, to identify one, the resources that was already left on the table with Gary Graves. Two, identify the leadership in all the parishes from East Baton Rouge to Shreveport and get their agenda. Because I can't go to DC and formulate any plan unless I know the plans of the people. And that's why these local elections this year are very important, because we have an opportunity to start together a brand new district, have a paradigm shift with our own vision. We can't build on somebody else's vision because they never had anything that they built. So right now, one, we have to start from the beginning, but we don't have time for trial and error. This seat is only for 2 years. Next thing you know, it's time for re-election. I'm not naive to the fact that the groups and the people in this area, in this district, there are two folks, one that own things and two that buy things. And we're the ones that's buying. So if I'm going to go in as an elected official, I have to identify who own the grocery stores, who own the car lots, who own the banks, who own the trucking companies, who own the sawmills, who own the logging jobs, who own the mills that do the sugar and the cane. So that's where I've been doing for the last 10 years. So I really don't have to use a GPS to go to anywhere in the district. I know where everything is. So I hope I started with that segue and gave you a little feel for who I am and what direction I would like to go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, public safety and crime rates are a major concern here in Alexandria. And the same can be said in the Shreveport area, probably in the Baton Rouge area as well. And here in Alexandria, the rates are surging well above the national averages. How do you plan to address these issues and support, like in our case, a grossly understaffed police department?
Yeah, it has to be a twofold. From the federal law supersedes state, and is incumbent on a congressman to make sure that every parish have an allotment of funds within those 7 categories I talked about. But the problem we've been having, Brother Jack and Brother Damien, is when the money comes to Louisiana, it don't get back to where it needs to go. So to answer your question with crime, first of all, we need to start with our neighborhoods. We need to start helping community organizations, churches, faith-based organizations, and even the schools keep those programs that keep our young people active year-round. But what has happened, and you might know it, team ball, career ball. And I'm not deviating from what I'm saying, because remember I said prevention and intervention. If you kept a child busy fishing, hunting, playing baseball, playing basketball, going to do things, 9 times out of 10, they would have a structured idea of problem solving and different things of that. It has to start with a unified thing, a plan with the school, a plan with after school. We have to start helping these single mothers with some safety nets after school. We have to help with some transportation to go from point A to point B to get some of these social programs. And I know we have gang problems because when kids go to school, they live in the same neighborhood and never play with one another until they go to school. Those are the problems that we've been having, and it comes from federal money, Mr. Jack, to answer your question. You have to have money for staff, money for programs, money for different things to bring these innovative programs to stop the cycle of crime. Now, at a certain point in life, young men, I know in our perspective, we need our role models. They need to see more of us. Right. I go to school sometime and I volunteer just to let young men see another black man walking on campus. And I'm not degrading the janitor, I'm not degrading the bus drivers, but to let them see because America, advertisement, television, the only time we are lifted up is when it's with crime, it's in an advertisement, or it's when one of these movies that's showing us in a negative connotation. So I think it's a lot. But to answer your question, Mr. Jack, I think we need funding. Funding is the most important thing to add, whether it be cameras, whether it be vests, whether it be better training for the police, whether it be youth intervention program. It starts from funding. And you might say, well, how you get it? There's a new district. There's going to be a new congressman. My job is to look at that federal budget. Now, I could go from USDA. USDA have $150 billion a year allocated to their national budget. You never hear USDA talking about going out of business. You never hear them talking about laying off. So, okay, and so, and rural development is mandated to make community loans, whether it be with recreations, whether it would be with water system, whether it would be with housing, to families that live in a community under 50,000. That's 90% of the district. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But so your elected official need to know these things to go and connect the dots and say, okay, Avals have 20 million. Rapides have 15 or 30 or 60 million. Opelousas have so much. So my thing when I go, I want to know, what is my total budget for my district? Because they might have to keep refilling my kitty because I'm going to spend my money. I'm going to make sure that the police jury get it. I'm going to make sure that nonprofits get it. But of course, it all comes back to, and your neighborhood, if you enjoy your neighborhood, if you have parks, you have clean parks, you have little, I remember when I was coming up, you had little working programs during the summer. You had Cedar, you had different little programs to work. Yeah. Okay, so all of these jobs and all of those things brought self-worth. They start helping folks. So I'm old school. I like to go back to some of those old programs because the fixed income mom, the fixed income grandmothers, they may not have that extra money to bring the kids to the park. But I think if we have some volunteers, teachers, recreation folks with stipends, that could help in the neighborhood. And I think it would alleviate a lot of crime for the kids that's coming up and those that already fell by the wayside or may have caused problems. There is some ways for rehab and some rehabilitation. And I know I went all over the place, but it's going to take a unified effort. But most of all, Mr. Jack, is going to take funding. And that would be my job, to secure the funding so we wouldn't have shortages with the officers. Things that we need help.
That's you, Jack.
I think that's Mr. Williams connect.
Yeah.
Look like he's coming back. If you guys can bear with us a few seconds, technology.
Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Are you still there, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, it's showing that his connection is still active.
So he's trying to
messing up.
Yeah. We lost Mr. Williams. But he was bringing us some pretty good. As soon as he comes back in, Damon, we'll let him back in.
Right. Yeah, he's making some interesting points about going after the money. That's something that we always discuss, that you got to know where to fund in that to go after the funding. You got to know what your role is as a politician. It's not a popularity contest. Yeah. It's actually to do work. So, unfortunately in our community, and I say that I don't live in Alexandria, but everybody know that's where my heart at. That's where I'm from. So
yeah. Hold on 1 second, Damon. I think we got him back.
I'm back, gentlemen.
All right, you back.
Well, you know what happened? That conversation was getting too hot, man.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Oh, y'all know that, young man. This podcast was a little bit too hot, man. FCC had to say y'all have to slow this thing down.
Look, I work in that industry too, Mr. Williams. So I work in the telecom industry. You know what time it is. Yes, oh yeah. But I guess we'll pick up where we left off. It was something something very interesting that you said when you mentioned about they had programs in the summer for the kids, to work, jobs. One of the biggest things that in our community is, we have such a large economic disparity, and the lack of livable wages are very significant issues in our district. So I guess you kind of touched on that, but what strategies do you have to create more sustainable job opportunities for the residents in a district that you say is, 90% of that is cities where the population is under 50,000?
You have to concentrate on whether contracts I'm always going to look at that federal pot. And in those 7 components that I talked about, there are federal budgets. Each one of those, every federal dollar has a mandatory either 25 to 30% earmark for minority communities or minority contractors or minority workers. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But the problem is, it's not if we would live according to the rules that's already on the books, gentlemen, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Wow. But the problem, because guess what? They passed laws of equality, but it's the one who implemented the laws is not equal. And I get to say it this way. I don't have a problem. What happened to the $15 an hour wage push and this raising the minimum wage to a higher increase for a better living? Well, that music was only good for a certain season. Then it died out. So I'm like this, and you're gonna understand my premise, and I'm gonna share it with you. I'm a farmer, and I chew trees and things, and I tell my boys when they were growing up, I say, when you have your own firewood, you get as warm as you want. I say, when you have to borrow firewood from somebody else, you get as warm as they let you.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying, gentlemen? And,
yes,
and to be honest, we do not have no firewood, gentlemen. We don't have trees. Now, I plant trees and I have trees, but I'm saying the community at large right now in Rapides Parish, since we talking about Rapides, how many black businesses that we have that can hire our children, our young people coming out of college, our young men coming back from the military or whatever? There's none. But you know where the money is? In the VA hospital, okay, at the airport, at the Air Force Base, okay? But who have those jobs? The guys who controlling those federal dollars. That is why the prison system have other guys looking over us. It's not that those jobs are hard to find, but it's a systemic problem where some of those guys come right out of high school and go straight to the rural communities in Pollock, Winsboro, these little rural prisons. They come right out of high school and go to work because that's the feeder system. So to answer your question about jobs, we need to have that federal budget once again. And if $20 billion come to Louisiana and 20% of that would be for minority businesses, whether it be contractors, whether it be truck drivers, whether it be this, I want to see an accountability system put in place. For every federal dollar come through District 6, I want to know what contractor got it, how many people he hired, and how many of those folks look like us. We want to get with the Votech schools and start training for this renewable energy money. They have new jobs that's coming up for 21st century. Industrial hemp, they have cannabis, they have the medical marijuana program, they have carbon sequester credit programs, they have environmental science programs coming up. STEM is taking over. We need to at least start getting our kids prepared for these 21st century jobs. USDA, even though they have their flaws, they're one of the biggest employers in the world. They have over 200,000 employees. The state office is in Alexandria. They have a great intern program. I've sent at least 42 to 45 young people in the last 15 years through USDA, and all of them have federal jobs at this time. Southern University, Alcorn, Jackson State, every SWAC school in the Delta. Matter of fact, my 2 boys went to the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff and became USDA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife employees. Now they're self-employed. So I understand connecting the dots. I know it's going to start at home. It's going to start having the families buy in. is going to start having the community. What happened to this thing? It take a community to raise a kid, a village to raise a child, or a village to do so forth. Now the village is just letting the child stand on the street corner and don't tell them to go home. That didn't happen when I was coming up.
Oh no.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So the system is not broken. It's the people that's running the system. And if you have a congressman that's complacent, or what we had the last 50 years was a Republican congressman who didn't care about the conversations we are having, we wasn't going to get any traction. So I made sure in my advocacy that I always understood the rules of the game from the federal level. Because when you know the federal rules, you know the federal register, you know how to apply it to everyday life. Federal law supersedes state. So when you get your federal laws together, you make sure the police jury do what they're supposed to do. You make sure the health and hospital do what they're supposed to do. You make sure DOTD do what they're supposed to do. So everybody with some accountability. Now they're getting the money and nobody asking them where it went. So we need to definitely you see what I'm saying? So that's where we would be able to acquire, and we need to start helping the small businesses. My thing is, we need to change our mindset. We so excited about buying and being consumers. Read an article maybe about 6 months ago. Black America spent more than $1 trillion. That's
right.
The last 3 years. Can you imagine if we would turn over 20% of that in our own communities? What we would have. So I think that's where it comes with education. We need to start telling our folks, hey, we could put a community store here, but will you buy from them? Will you shop with them? I need to make sure we could create soft jobs. Soft job is what? What the federal government buy? If I'm working on plans now for a WIC warehouse. How many times you went to the store and said we no longer selling WIC? Women's and infants and children's products. How many times we went to a place and said we no longer accepting EBT cards? So I'm talking to some young businessmen and women now and saying, okay, why don't you open a WIC warehouse where you sell just WIC products, where you have a guaranteed customer base? You see where I'm going, gentlemen?
Yeah.
You have a guaranteed buyer, which is that person who gets federal vouchers every month. And now you could say, I have 1,000 customers spending $500 a month in my WIC warehouse. Now you tell me you couldn't hire black folks.
Mr. Williams, pivoting off of that question was on yesterday. Just yesterday, the Louisiana Illuminator highlighted the fact that 1 in 5 Louisianians depend on food supplements.
Okay.
And when you get into urban centers like Alexandria, and you have reports like the Alice report that say over half of the citizens in the city of Alexandria cannot make ends meet.
Yes, sir.
And that's in the urban, it's kind of like a quasi-urban center. And we got basically the same problem down in Baton Rouge, up in Shreveport, over in Opelousas. Correct. And then you look in the rural area. How do you plan to tackle, the food insecurities themselves, both in that urban setting and in the rural setting?
I think we have to have instead of fixed budgets, flex budgets, because the food stamp allotment don't increase with inflation. Mm-hmm. So if you're getting $10, but the same food you bought for $10 might be $15, you don't get an increase. You see what I'm saying? And once again, that comes to that accountability. But it also comes to creating that safety net in your community. Okay? Suppose I put a pilot program out there and take just what you said, Brother Jack, and say, all right, we have food deserts in Ellick, we have food deserts in Shreveport, we have food deserts. I get with all of the black farmers who have dormant land and say, okay, gentlemen, we have a food shortage in all of the inner city, the urban cities within Louisiana, in my district. We get with USDA, we do a pilot project. We have one farmer growing mustard greens, one farmer growing tomatoes, one farmer growing watermelons, one farmer growing different things across. Now we're doing 2 things. We took dormant land that was dormant. We had a farmer that wasn't growing a crop, but we done married that farmer with a crop. We have Head Start that depend on vegetables because there's a program now from the field to the table with USDA. We have great programs that help with the senior citizens now. They give them $16 a month for a voucher. So we need to connect the resources that's out there to the human capital like farmers and producers to help wedge that little bit. On the same note, I want to make sure that whoever is governor, Republican, Democrat, do not refuse federal dollars for District 6. Because just before school closed, we had a proposal on the table to reject $17 million of SNAP money for summer feeding programs and was going to replace it with $3 million. Now, what kind of math is that? Because they want to prove a point that they didn't want to take money from the Biden administration. So those are the type of foolishness that I, as a candidate, gonna voice during the campaign, and once elected, gonna help pass legislation and find someone to say that no federal money can be refused from any governor for the state of Louisiana, especially District 6. But let me go a little further, gentlemen. Louisiana is not independent as much as they think we are. We are one of the biggest welfare states in the nation. 62 to 65% of our budget comes from the federal government. If they would take away the federal budget from Louisiana, everybody would be on food stamps.
Wow.
Okay. So like Paul Harvard, now you know the rest of the story. So for all these guys talking about Louisiana is great and we making men's meat and we doing well, we are not doing well. Check it out. We have never been higher than 45 on the national budget list. So for all of them talking about we doing well and we want to continue going in the direction we're going, not me. Because if you take that federal budget, nobody would be working. Everybody at the Capitol would be unemployed. Everybody in the governor's mansion would be unemployed. Everybody at the VA hospital would be unemployed. So those are the stories that they don't tell us because we're supposed to be so far at the ground. But I'm at the top. I'll go to the Capitol, I'll go to the White House, I'll talk with lobbyists, I deal with the money from the top. If you always follow the money, and now, suppose the president would have had an attitude and said, okay, you don't want 17 million? When the budget kick in October, you get nothing. We would all be in bad shape. Okay? So that's the reality of where we are, gentlemen. There's a lot of things that we don't know as layman folks, and it's my job as a congressman to be transparent, get the information.
Looks like we're having another episode. Sounds like it's coming back.
Oh, it's not that back, brother David. You know how you do interference.
Oh yeah.
So I'm answer. Go ahead.
Well, just
I'm
when
listening.
you listen to when you're saying about the dormant land and things of that nature, you know, the WIC warehouse, that type of stuff, that is something very unique and interesting proposal. With your background as an agriculturalist, during that same time frame, there was an issue. You know, there was a rough summer for the crawfish farmers in Louisiana as well.
Right.
And then of course, with the shrimping industry and the other seafood and agriculture industry, with us now trading from other countries, how do you plan to increase federal protection for Louisiana farming and seafood industry from unfair trade policies?
And that's a very good question. That's one of my proposals. We grow the best seafood in the world. Why should we have to pay higher or eat second? I think, like for the crawfish farmers, they know we live in Louisiana. They know we have dry and drought weather. Sometimes we have cold winters. There's money for wells. There is money for incubators. There are money for warehouses where we can grow some of these same type of seafoods indoors. Why don't we be innovative? You have to protect home, and the seafood industry, the crawfish, the fish, the redfish, the crab, the tariffs that they're doing in China and the food that they're bringing in. I think if we say Louisiana first and look at the domestic market and see what they are paying us for our seafood, and we start regulating and saying we're going to sell ours in-house in Louisiana first so our people can have the best, safest seafood at a cheaper price, I think we'll get more respect. But right now, they're treating us just like we want to be treated. You have the bigger farmers and you have the big brokers and you have the guys at Wall Street selling our seafood before it even come out the fields to a foreign broker, and then they swapping it with the different things. So to answer your question, regulation on the domestic side and having the farmers and the crawfish farmers work together, because when they start harvesting, it's every man for himself. So they be hustling and trying to get their crawfish out, and they be lowballing one another, and before you know it, they might be selling it 50 cents a pound just so it don't sit in a boat. But if they have a conversation, and those type of industries don't have the protection like rice, wheat, corn, soybean. So I would like to introduce insurance, just like the industrial hemp program is not getting off because you don't have the insurance like for disasters and heat and so forth. So to answer your question, Brother Damon, it's getting a consensus of the farmers, getting their whether it was whether it was lack of equipment, whether it was lack of technology, and you would have to get a plan to start with USDA because they have the money. But the federal government like this, if you don't ask, they don't tell. How many programs they have that we don't know about and they don't come out and tell you about it? And before and when you find out about it, so that would be my job. And on that note, I would like to have an office and an outreach center in each parish. This district is too large to have one or two phone bases of staff members to answer questions. It don't make sense with the folks that's in office now. You make a phone call, you fill the form for them to do the background check on you, you give them the consent form to investigate your claim, and it'd be a whole year before they even call back to you and say what they're doing. That is ludicrous. So starting fresh, we need to have some accountability. We need to have some accessibility. We won't be able to solve the problems, but at least if we get to know what the problems are, we can work on. I can see a good urban-rural connection with the warehouses that are empty in the urban centers, transforming them to where we can utilize it with agriculture, rural development, storage buildings. I talked to a gentleman the other day with FEMA. FEMA leased buildings. Look, all the empty buildings in Alexandria. Look, that old cotton gin, that old cotton farm right on I-49 waiting for some storage, okay? Those are federal contracts. Those buildings get paid whether a storm come or not, gentlemen. Why couldn't we store food for the World Food Bank that our farmers grow here in Louisiana? And when they're ready to ship it, go right there to the Red River and transport it up the river and bring it to where it needs to go. So these are options that'll create jobs, that'll start turning over a dollar, whether it's a big dollar in our community or a small one, it's a dollar. So there's a lot of innovative ways that we could connect some dots to get some movement. And if we use it like the law of physics, for every action there's a reaction, we need to just start making some action and see what come out of it. Yes, sir.
I coach these basketball kids and I tell them, I said, we got to stop playing. We got to stop reacting and make them react.
Come on now. That's what I'm talking about. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. You advocate for keeping the Affordable Care Act in place and increasing farmers markets in the urban food deserts. Can you elaborate on how you plan to, achieve these goals and improve healthcare options for rural and, folk here in the urban area that don't actually have access to decent healthcare?
Right. Healthcare is supposed to be a right. it's supposed to be one of the first and foremost things from a federal standpoint, a state standpoint, and even us. We have to start demanding the accountability to our leaders. Infant mortality rate, our women dying in the delivery room, our elderly folks struggling. What we need to do is more or less from the congressional standpoint. Once again, Affordable Care Act, more people getting health care, doing things. There is nothing better than having access. Matter of fact, I'm gonna use Alexandria. We have right by the airport. We had the hospital abandoned. One of those hospitals left open, left abandoned, not too far from the airport. There was a plan on the table to bring it in for assessments and mental health assessments and VA assessments. But because certain people wasn't at the table, certain people didn't get a chance to be at the meeting, it died. So those are the things that need to be stopped to make sure that we have affordable health care. Now with the Affordable Care Act, that's a bunch of rhetoric. I don't think anybody can prove that the Affordable Care Act did not increase and improve the livelihood of people. Once again, we have to connect with the hospitals, the caregivers, the providers, to make sure that access is available to everybody. I'm talking to the medical marijuana growers, some of the dispensaries. I'm hearing great results for some of the medication that's being used, but guess what? It's only for a select few. So I'm like this. If your insurance could pay for Botox, if insurance could pay for stomach reduction, look like insurance or somebody should be paying for a company that would help grandma arthritis pains that she's going through. So it's a whole lot of different things come to the table that's going to be available. But to answer your back, is to be the loudest voice that I can carry, to be the loudest voice that I can to those things of food. A lot of our kids go home with a bag of chips and a little drink to share with 2 or 3. That shouldn't be. We know we have problems with our mothers, some of them that, either on drugs or alcohol, and that's just the nature of it. But I think if schools and let me go back. The Black Panther Party became famous because they was doing breakfast before the kids was going to school. Everybody got mad at them when they started, but then after a while, the free lunch program came, the lunch came, and that all came from that. So we need to be in a position now to say, hold on. I know I have 5 or 6 kids in this neighborhood going home hungry every day. Auntie, we gonna have a social worker come, we're gonna sign them up. They're eligible for WIC, they're eligible for this. We need to start identifying and taking accountability for our community ourselves. Because once those children leave, it is not their fault that they're coming home to either be latchkey kids or kids that go to bed. And if they go to bed hungry, they're not going to study. Another thing is a problem is housing. And I'm not switching gears, but a healthy house and a safe house, it's part of your mental health, your physical health. Children, we have 2 and 3 generations living in the same house, gentlemen. Grandmothers, younger grandmothers, and grandmothers. And that shouldn't be. And because nobody is sane, overcrowdedness, everybody is not eating, everybody is not sleeping, everybody don't have the good wherewithal to use the restroom. When COVID hit, it was taking our families out because we could not hide or go and isolate in another room. Okay? We live in shotgun houses. But what get me? We have these slumlords, and we have these guys with these Section 8 vouchers, knowing good and well those houses are not adequate, but they might have 10, 15, 20, 30 houses on the road. Who's checking them? Nobody. Because they're either the assessor's friend, the clerk of court friend, the sheriff friend, the lawyer friend, or the banker friend. These are not popular conversations, gentlemen, but they have to be because they are tearing our communities down and they're tearing our people down. Okay? And I'm not against business, but when the business become more, is it a more detriment to the people than good, that's when it's a problem. I don't have a problem with certain stores in the communities, whether you're Indian, Iranian, West Indies, black or white. But when you allow trading food stamps for alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs, I have a problem. But nobody in the neighborhood want to call ATF on that. But little Johnny got his pants sagging, and y'all throwing him on the ground and want to bring him to prison because somebody called and said he looked like a thug. So right. I know I might not sound like the candidate, but I'm a candidate for the season today. And this is the climate we living in. Somebody got to tell them. And like I tell the folks, with your vote and my voice, we're going to get to where we need to get together.
Wow. That's all right, though, brother. That's all right. Too often sir. We hear, we don't, they say it's the elephant in the room. No, it ain't the elephant. It's the reality in the room. We the majority. Yeah, we the majority in that district. So, I always say if you ain't that's in the city. If you ain't invested in the majority, no. And how a city gonna be healthy if the majority ain't getting no attention? That's impossible.
Right. And you're right, brother Damon. And you know what? Strategically, they carved it to where if another guy would have got in the race and isolated a certain pockets of votes, we could have been a majority with another person running this thing. Oh, so yeah. They knew what they were doing. And there's a lot of, I can't talk about another person's conversation. I can only talk about mine. We have to be focused on what the Supreme Court said. There was a pocket of people, like a third, with taxation and no representation. Now, I work with white farmers, loggers, Roy Martin, Georgia Pacific, all of those major guys. But the law said they had to have a second majority black district. And I don't want none of the non-blacks, whites, Asians, Hispanics, to fear me. Because one thing I know about black folks, we don't have a problem being fat. We're going to treat you right. Because we know what it is to be treated wrong.
Right.
Am I right? And I told one gentleman the other day, he said, man, look like y'all want revenge. I said, sir, if we wanted revenge, you think it would have took so long?
Yeah, you can't get revenge. He
couldn't say nothing. I said, man, we cooking in y'all restaurants. We babysitting y'all kids. At one time, we were shaving y'all with a straight razor. You think if we wanted revenge, it have took that long?
We just want we want equity.
That's all. Equity, fairness, and government. And so I'm excited about the times because I think I as a man, you have to find yourself. And I had a hard upbringing, and I saw civil rights at the very beginning. I'm gonna share this with your audience if you don't mind. My father was murdered when I was a baby, a year and 6 months in New Orleans. My mom, that was in the 50s, 58. My mom had to move back to Kaplan, Louisiana. And segregation was rough. And welfare and all of this stuff wasn't like it is today. I can remember, gentlemen, that my mom used to have to bring my dad death certificate to prove that I wasn't an illegitimate baby. And I would see the trauma. I would see the hurt every time she was asked that question. So I'm in the living room one day and Martin Luther King had his famous speech, I Have a Dream. And my uncle and everybody, my grandfather and them was excited. I went find my mom, gentlemen. And I told her, I said, Mom, one day you won't have to prove who I am. I'm gonna be somebody. And that planted a seed in me, gentlemen. And you remember I told you I've been doing this for over 50 years? Lord bless, I'm 67. I was 17 years old in Kaplan, Louisiana. I was the quarterback of a predominantly white school in 1975. And we didn't have a black on the homecoming court. And I was the best one on the team. And they came to me and said, well, Pete, we need some representation on the homecoming court. And I'm ready to go to college. I have all these scholarship offers. And my uncle and them didn't want me to do it. But I made a decision, 17 years old, calling a press conference, telling them I'm not going to play if we don't have nobody on the homecoming court. This is 1975. And sure enough, it caused some problems. It had some riots. It had some people upset. And I was called a troublemaker and a this and that, and I lost scholarships and things. But it was at that turning point where I was willing to sacrifice my gain for the gain of the people. And from that time on, gentlemen, I live, eat equality. I live and eat civil rights. So that's why I can talk the way I talk. I owe no man none but to love him. I'm a brother who respect one and do one. But we're in that season where that season is all over again. And I understand what's going on, because just like I looked at Martin Luther King and say, one day I'm going to be somebody, they had a Bubba somewhere sitting on his grandfather's lap. And his grandfather might have told him, don't ever let them be nothing. And that's the generation that we living in. Segregationists, integrationists, and those that were stuck in the middle. And we just got to be ready to deal with it, gentlemen, because I'm not giving up no ground. And that's the reality of the day we in. Just like, and those guys, the ones you hear and hollering, all of that, go back. That's the grandkids that was playing on the laps of those who had the things to say negative. And all I'm doing is reinforcing what I grew up with, and all they're doing is reinforcing what they grew up with. Now, which man gonna show up in the room in Washington, D.C.?
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You want to go ahead, Damon?
I know we're running out of time here. I know you got another engagement.
I appreciate it. I enjoy it. I'm just elated. I'm gonna be accessible, bro. Bro, Jack tell you, I'm a text him back and call him back, so I ain't hiding from nobody.
Yeah, one of the you kind of mentioned about criminal justice, things of that nature. But one of the things we wanted to ask you, that's a major problem in our community, especially right now since we're short on time.
Okay.
Many community.
I can stay a little longer. I done already text the other folks that I'm engaged in a meeting. You know, sometimes you got to eat what's on the table. You know, whatever they have, whatever conversation they have might not be as good. I'm fine.
So you're saying our conversation not that bad tonight, huh?
Hey, it's on, you know, and I'm feeling. And guess what? The election just started, gentlemen. So I don't think it'll be anything that I'm going to that I couldn't get to. So you have me, and when you release me, that's when I'm released. How about that?
All right.
I understand.
So go ahead. Let me let you finish, brother Damon. Let me so I can hear your question.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we want, where you mentioned about the recreational facilities, things of that nature. Many rural communities and cities such as Alexandria, lack adequate parks and recreation facilities. The city of Alexandria, for the last 2 summers, they basically have not had a active parks and recreation system. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong. They have some summer feeding programs at a few locations.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about, when you said if you teach a kid how to hunt, fish, play sport, then he learns structure and he learns, that there's other alternatives outside of when he goes to his neighborhood where drugs and that type of activity. But many of our communities, especially in District 6, lack adequate park and recreational facilities. So how do you plan to secure funding for the renovation and construction of these essential community assets, especially when the numbers show that kids who grow up in communities with healthy park and recreation systems, especially minority kids, are less likely to be involved in criminal activity and are more likely to either pursue college or pursue a working at a much higher rate than communities where they don't have healthy park and recreational facilities. So what's your plan to secure funding for those type of, or either renovation? Because in our community, Alexandria, when I say our community, we've heard that, they don't have an employee to staff the place, or they don't, things of that nature, so
go ahead. That's all.
And I know me myself, I grew up single parent household, and I always say, I know what the recreational. I grew up in Macon, Georgia. I moved to Louisiana when I was 20, but I knew what the parks and the recreation system was for my life. It saved me from a single parent household. My mom wasn't on drugs, but my neighborhood was crack infested. I had uncles who were, victims of the crack epidemic. But I also knew that instead of me going back to them neighborhoods, I could go to the park, I could go to the gym.
Yes, sir.
Before they sent me home, they was gonna say, "Damon, you hungry?" They was gonna make sure I had, something to eat, even if it was a bologna sandwich.
Come on now.
They made sure I ate something. So, what's your plan to secure funding for the renovation and construction of such an essential community assets?
Brother Damon, you hit the nail on the head. I live in Lettsworth, okay? The northern part of Ponkapee Parish, where the county seat is New Roads. I've been harping on recreation for 20-some years. Brother Damien, Brother Jack, we do not even have one basketball court in Lettsworth, okay? My kids playing baseball during the summer, long grass, a makeshift backstop with a pecan tree in center field and no portalet. But in New Roads, now they might get upset with me if they hear this thing, but they've been getting upset with me all the while because it's the same tax dollar. We have tennis courts, we have 6 or 7 baseball fields, we have brick bathrooms to use the restroom, we have walking trails and walking tracks. And that's the same parish. Once again, to answer your question, when that federal money is earmarked for recreation, whether it's going to come through a partnership with the school board, the Parks and Recreation, or even the Sheriff Department outreach program, or even Big Brothers and Big Sisters or Boys and Girls Club, that's how you get it done. With the money, you create the jobs, okay? Suppose you have 50 kids, okay, in one neighborhood, but we don't have anybody to organize the game, so forth and so on. Now, the same uncles that we talking about, the same young men that may have got out of jail and then turned his life around. I don't want to hear this thing about, well, he went to jail. We don't want those felonies around. Well, you got felonies sitting in the White House, okay? So the approach is not hard, Brother Damon and Brother Jack. It's the attitude of those who control that approach. I know money's come through Ponkapee Parish and Avals Parish and Rapides Parish that could be earmarked for recreation. But the private schools, the middle class, and the wealthy families, they don't have to worry about it. They have a basketball goal in their yard. They have a swimming pool in their yard. So to answer your question, that's going to be a priority, because if we link recreation with incarceration and say we want to work with prevention and intervention before retention, that money could come straight from DOJ. That money could come straight from, once again, rural development, USDA, have all of this money. 501c3s could apply for it. Church faith-based organizations could apply for it. The city of Alexandria or police jury can apply for it. Those are federal dollars. And so now it's only a matter of putting a budget in and putting a plan in and applying for it. But guess who make that conversation? Your congressman. Your congressman called a state rep, call Mr. Lavadan, call whoever else is in, call the city council and say there's a grant. They've been having recreation grants since way back in 1980. You can tie recreation with health. We're trying to get rid of obesity. We're trying to reduce the risk of heart attack in our elderly. Now you're getting money for a walking trail. You see what I'm saying? So it's just a matter of understanding how you put it together, how you act. The federal government is like this. How much money you need, what demographics is going to take care of, and how many people is going to service. And once you meet those goals, Brother Jack and Brother Damon, money's supposed to be coming. But now once that money comes, everybody, now you're going to have somebody want a 10% administrative fee. Somebody else, a consultant, going to want a 15% overseeing fee? Why you need to oversee the 10% administrative fee? So those are the things, gentlemen, that we need that needs to be worked. But it's not hard. It's not hard. No. And I'm smiling and laughing because it's not funny. But it's doable. But nobody want to do it.
And yeah, that's one of the things Jack and myself I always talk about, Mr. Williams. We need politicians that first understand what they signing themselves up for, and understand, know what is not a popularity contest, it's work, and you got to have a passion. If you don't have that passion to make the change and seek that change, then it's not going to be any change.
Right.
So it's great to hear your ideas about reaching out to the state senator, reaching down to the city council.
It has to work like that, because it's a chain of command, and with all due humility, gentlemen, everything that I'm telling you and the listeners on this podcast, I've done it. I use my own kids as experiments, because how can I tell you how to cook in your kitchen, Brother Damon and Brother Jack, if I didn't cook in my kitchen? My wife and I, we met in college. We dated 5 years. We've been married 42 years. My children grew up in Lessworth, not Worthless, but Lessworth. They went to public school by choice, okay? Because you're going to be the best you could be in your community or wherever you go, public school or not. The Lord bless. And once again, with all humility, I'm not boasting or bragging, but I want the listeners to know I'm not just rattling. All 4 of my kids went to school, graduated from high school, went to college, and graduated from college. You have 6 folks that lived in one house in a rural country town of Lessworth that all have college degrees. I'm not doing it and saying this just because I'm saying it. I lived it. I know what it meant to go to PTA meetings. I know what it meant to put a goal in my yard. My boys played baseball and baseball only. The mission was Bible, books, and baseball in that order. That was the order. And
I'm going to apply that one to my youngest one. He played basketball. I'm telling him the way to practice.
Come on now. They did 4-H, they did beta, but we were always community servants. And right now, they're all grown and going and living and doing their own thing. But everyone in the community that I meet, different places, they say, your children have always been part of the community, very respectful. So, and I'm not boasting on me. But when you're going to have somebody coming to tell you something, the first thing I want to know is, have you traveled that road before? I taught in the public school system. Remember, I graduated. I'm a PE and Parks and Recreation guy. I was the first Black director at Martin Luther King Center in Truman subdivision in Lafayette, 24 years old, right out of college. So I understand what you're saying, okay? It can work. But when you get a bunch of families together and saying, okay, we're going in a new direction. There's no room for anybody to tell District 6 no, because we're playing catch up. Okay.
Right, we behind. We're 20 years behind. Right.
Okay, we're not going to ask for money to splurge. We're trying to catch up.
We need to get started. We need the money just to get started.
There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. It don't. And you know what else kill projects? They give you $1 million, but you have to have a $400,000 feasibility study. Man, we don't have a gym. I done did the feasibility study. You just tell me how big it's going to be. Okay. Am I right, gentlemen? Y'all know that's what happened now.
You are 100% right.
Hey, man, Jack always trying to figure out ways how they launder the money. Man, I tell Jack all the time, I said, boy, they got some ways to launder some money. Man, boy, the engineer firm with the feasibility studies. Like you say, what I need, I got $1 million. What I need to spend $200,000 for to say build a jail.
I got 20 kids. I got 50 kids walking in the dark at night. I don't need a feasibility study to tell me I need 10 lights and I need a gravel road. I don't need a feasibility to tell me I need drainage, because in Lower 3rd and on LA1, when you get up to the railroad track turn to LSUA, we have flooding problems. I don't need no one to tell me that sooner or later there's gonna be a problem where that train gonna stop on that track and somebody gonna be left behind in their neighborhood in case there's a derailment. I understand what's going on in Rapid.
with that said, Mr. Williams, can you before we proceed to close and get out of here, would you like to make a statement to our listening audience out there for the one? Now, we were a little early this evening. Yeah, we were a little early. Our prime time is like that 7-8 time frame.
Right.
But on the same token, for those folk that'll come back and pick it up and listen to it, do you have anything you'd like to say to everyone?
Yeah, I just like to let the listeners know and the families and the folks of District 6 that it's not hard. Government, communities working together is not hard. You just have to have somebody that's willing to listen to the ideas, listen to the options that's available, and go and ask for it and then bring it back to the people. All of our ills will not be solved in the first 6 months, but at least we could have let them know that this district may have been forced on us, or it may have been a political thing, but we don't have to be forced to continue living like we've been living. And I'm excited about being the voice of the people. What you see is what you get. This is not scripted. I came straight from the shoulders, and because I'm old enough to know the difference, and I done been there and done that. I done been to DC. I done wrestled with the best. I done saw 5 or 6 different presidents and administrations, and I've always been the guy. When the NAACP asks you if you're going to be good at the meeting, you have because they may figure that I may say something that may upset the ones who sponsoring their program. I tell them, leave me off the program. If I can't have the freedom, if I can't be with no respected person and respect District 6 without fear or favor and tell the powers that be what we need, I might not be the candidate. But if you want somebody who's going to not only say what they do, but do what they say and represent you the best to my ability as a professional and respect you all the time, because titles don't make nobody. I know a lot of people with titles behind their name, whether it's congressman, president, MD, doctor this. A man is a man. And I'm going to represent the District 6 to the best of my ability. And all I want is the opportunity to be your voice. And I thank you, Brother Damon. I thank you, Brother Jack, for having me. And God bless y'all, and thank y'all very much.
Well, I sure appreciate you, Mr. Peter. It's always inspiring. Anytime I'm able to talk to somebody, with your attitude and your level of enthusiasm to do that, I would be a politician if I could, but I was one of them kids that got into a little trouble.
That's all right.
I got into a little trouble at a young age too from misinfluence. But
I don't want to be a politician, Brother Damon.
Right. You want to make stuff happen.
I want to be an elected official, because a politician tell you what you want to hear. That elected official going to tell you what you need to hear, and that's who I want to be. Okay.
Well, I surely appreciate you.
Man, I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all very much.
So, Jack, you want to go ahead and wrap it up?
Yeah, Mr. Williams, we definitely thank you so much, because I realize your schedule is just getting kicked off and all that kind of good stuff. But we truly thank you, from the bottom of our hearts, for joining us today and sharing your visions for the 6th Congressional District. This new district.
I'll be available anytime y'all want, and then next time I'm gonna get the prime time slot and tell everybody else I'm booked.
we appreciate your insight, your dedication to the entire community of District 6. To our viewers, we want to thank you guys for tuning in and engaging with us. Remember, your vote is your voice, so make sure you get out there and go vote. We also want to extend a special thank you to our advertisers, Math Makes Sense, National Auto and Tires, Sadler's Towing, and Long Products. Your Your support makes this show possible. Until next time, I want everybody out there to stay safe and stay informed. And please make sure you get out there and go register to vote.
Go vote.
Thank y'all very much. All right.
I miss all my people down there for sure.
We're going to get it better so you can come back, brother.